Okay, so for the next part of the service, we're going to do belts. So there's multiple belts that can be on your engine, and you need to know because Yanmar, we don't know what belt you're going to have. You're either going to have a serpentine belt, you're going to have a poly V, or a poly V belt slash serpentine belt, a regular standard V belt, and they can be different sizes. So this one actually says M21 on it. You can't see it, but we have an M19 and an M20. So there's multiple different ones you can have. And your Yanmar dealer slash distributor can't look up what you have because this engine will leave not Yanmar, but your local dealer with different options on it. So if you get a high output alternator or you get a different water pump, all different kinds of options lead to different belts, and that's not how it came from Yanmar. So just please be aware of that. So to take this off, we're going to need to take off 3 10mm bolts. So we've got 1 nut and 2 bolts here. They're pretty easy to take off. They're all 10mm. It should not take too long. You should be able to get them out by hand. Here, I just want to remind you, if you haven't seen part 1, go out and check part 1 real quick. Okay, so we've got it off, and we can see that there's a part number labeled across the top of that belt. So we are going to have to go get that belt for this engine. Okay guys, so now what we got to do is change the belts. On this, it's pretty easy. We actually have a tensioner on our alternator. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to loosen the bolt at the bottom, which I believe is a 13mm. So break it free. Once you've broken free this bolt, the tensioner should be loose. We're going to have to break free a nut on the back side of here. There's not enough room in this engine bay to actually get a wrench in here. Unfortunately, it is super tight. So let me see if I can get it, and I'll show you guys. So unfortunately for the belt, I'm gonna need a stubby 17 to get the front piece loose, and it has to be an open set. You can't, it can't be a socket since it's a slotted stud. So I'm gonna have to go get that. Until then, we've already drained the oil. We haven't taken the filter off since I had to go get some filter wrenches, but I brought my set of filter wrenches. I'm gonna use the new filter to kind of find out which one I need. The filter's right here. Okay, so now we can see our oil filter. What I like to do is get a bag and a rag, just in case it spills a little bit. I want to keep it nice and clean under the engine. And I'm going to use my filter wrench to just kind of grab it off. And then I will come back because I'm going to have to use both hands to get this thing off. But basically you get it on and you twist until you take it off. Do not use channel locks or a screwdriver through the oil filter to try to remove it. That will cause more damage than good. Okay, so I broke the old one free. Now I can get it off. Oops. Try to keep the mess down to a minimum. I know I'm going to spill a little bit of oil. Grab your new filter, remove the plastic off of it. If it's Yanmar branded, they come pre-oiled on the O-ring. And then tighten it down as much as you can by hand. And then I'll wipe the whole engine down. You can see there's a little bit of oil running down. I'll wipe that off and we should be good on our oil change. Okay, so I wiped the mess from the engine. That part of our oil change is done. Now what we need to do is add oil, and you can add oil into one of two places. Remember, when adding oil, please have the dipstick in. If you don't, it'll actually push oil into the dipstick and cause a false reading on the engine. You can add oil here, or from the yellow cap on the top right here. So either one is your oil fill. Now we'll be using this one since of course we can't really get to that one up there. So I will add about 2.5 quarts, which is about what came out of this, 2.7, and we'll see what happens from there. So here we got quart number 2 going in. The Yanmar 1540, you can use SAE 30 or 1540 for these engines. They're small, there's no turbo on them, so they don't really need 1540, but it's totally fine to use it. Okay, on these 3YM30s, you can have 2 different kinds of fuel filters. You can either have a screw-on style, like a metal-clad filter, or you can have a cartridge style filter, which is this right here. Now, to get this thing apart, you take a flat blade screwdriver against this collar. Okay, so here's a better light. You kind of get our screwdriver against one of the flat pieces, and then you tap on the end, and it shouldn't take that much to get it off. So kind of just, there we go. And now you can see that this collar will just spin right off. And there's our fuel filter right there. So what you can do is you grab it with 2 fingers and it stays stuck up in the housing, and you can wiggle it back and forth until it comes out just like that. And that's the element. Okay, so this housing, I always go in here and kind of clean out everything in here with a nice clean brush. The O-rings do not come with the fuel filters, so the part number for the O-ring is going to be 24341-000440. That's only if you have this style fuel filter. So I'm going to take the old O-ring off, the new one on. Okay, so the new one's on. Then we need our fuel filter. This is going to be part number 104-500-55710. And the way this works, so I'm going to keep the collar on this, set it down right here. And we got it here. You put this filter up into the housing, so it fits up in. You'll usually feel it, it'll stay in place so you can see it. And then what we're gonna do is, this O-ring is already lubed with diesel because of the fact that my hands are completely covered in it. But we're gonna put this housing up on, then we're gonna get the lock ring underneath. Make sure to push from the bottom with 1 finger, and then grab the collar with the other so that the O-ring lies flat and doesn't pinch. Then you can spin this collar up, and this collar is not to be put on with any kind of hand tools. It is hand tighten only. So there we go, it's now hand tight. Now it's ready to bleed. Now what we'll do is we'll go to our belts, since we got them nice and loose. We're gonna loosen it a little bit more. So there's an automatic adjuster right here, and you're going to need to loosen this bolt. There's a bolt in the back right here. There's this stud right here. You're going to need to loosen this nut as well. And it's 13 for the adjuster, 14 for the back, and 17 for the stud in front. Once you got it kind of loose, you can take your old belt off. Get a little looser. Okay, so I got the belt loose. It's loose off the pulleys. If you're going to replace the serpentine belt, you're going to need to loosen these 2 fasteners right here that support the coolant pipe. Then you can slide it and get it out of the way, and then the belt will come off. You don't need to remove the coolant pipe or anything like that, so you won't be spilling any coolant. Now, to get these 2 off, there's going to be 2 13mm bolts for the water pump, 1 on top and then 1 on bottom. or I should say 1 nut, 1 bolt. And then there's going to be one behind the pump over on this side. If I can get it, let me get a wrench on it. Okay, so now that we got those 3 off, you can move the entire water pump back and forth. You can release the belt off the pulley. It kind of just pushes that way, and you can slide it off, and there's your belt. So we're going to put that one away. We want the 20. This is the M20. So I always like to have the lettering face out. I'm going to put it up and around. And there's also a track that you have to look at behind the crankshaft. So be aware that this belt doesn't just need to go here. It also has a place to go in a groove in the engine. Okay, so I'm gonna get this belt on, and once I get this belt on, I'll meet back up with you guys. To tension these belts, you can get a large screwdriver and push between the crankshaft and the pulley and cause it to tension up. Do not bend the pulley though. The other place you can put it is in between the engine and the bottom of the tensioner. And then you've got belt tension right there. So take a look. Let's shine the flashlight right here. So you can see kind of right where I put it. Okay, so what I did, retighten the belts up. This belt's tight, this belt's tight. Tighten your 3 13mm bolts on the pump. You've got a 13mm here, you've got your 17 stud, you've got your 13 here, you've got your adjuster, which is 13, and your bolt in the back, which is 14.